Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and SmackDown back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Well, I'm still coming down off the figurative high that was Double or Nothing weekend in Las Vegas, and there's one thing I learned after posting the review for that show a couple of days ago. It's that if you're not 100% positive about that show, if you're maybe like 97, 98% positive about the show, if you're not basically just orgasming the entire time you're talking about the show, then apparently you aren't positive enough about it. Who would have guessed? After a tribute to America's fallen soldiers in honor of Memorial Day opening Raw, we had Kofi Kingston coming out, so he's our first wild card guy of the night. He's doing pretty well for himself despite the fact Dolph Ziggler Pillmanized his neck last week on SmackDown. Kofi wants Brock to come out so he can cash in, but Seth Rollins comes out instead. Seth also wants Brock to come out, and then we get Boombox Brock. Boombox Brock. They have totally, bought into this, what was an organic feeling moment of Brock coming out last week with the briefcase on his shoulder like a boombox. They've done what the company often does when you get this kind of like seemingly organic moment that's it's entertaining. That they'll find that one thing and they'll just beat it into submission, beat that dead horse. So they've gone all in with it. They got the Brock Party t-shirt. They've given him a custom briefcase with speakers on it, and he's coming out to like this weird generic beat instead of his normal music. And then he comes in the ring and does the Running Man, which I honestly that moment alone was better than Double or Nothing. And so he's coming out there, and then there was this jarring moment where they changed the music to like Kofi's and then Seth's, as if he's kind of like choosing his player in the character's leg screen. The best part of that, though, is Paul Heyman rocking out to Seth Rollins' theme. So after that amazing moment, Seth storms off. He's just kind of annoyed by all this. And Paul Heyman goes, well, Seth just ruined our Brock party. And so he and Brock leave. And so that whole advertised thing of Brock deciding who's going to challenge for the championship does not happen here. Kind of a bait and switch, but that's not the last we'll see of Brock tonight. After that happens, Dolph Ziggler comes in, beats up Kofi from behind. Xavier Woods makes a save. We go to commercial. Kofi's being helped to the back. Dolph attacks again, and then Xavier and Dolph are fighting through the crowd and everything. And before Dolph destroys Xavier with a chair, Kofi comes back out and makes a save. And so then Dolph runs to the back. He comes back. He's a little bit bloodied after the fight he had with Xavier. And then Dolph cuts this promo about how he used to admire Kofi Kingston, but at Super Showdown, he's going to beat him for the championship because it should have been him. He walks off. It was, it was a very weird sequence of events after the Brock involvement, because we had beatdown, save, another beatdown, another save, and then a promo. It felt chaotic in kind of a good way, but also kind of repetitive. It felt like this was something that you'd see at Raw after the cameras go off the air and you get kind of this exclusive thing for the fans and everything. That's what that felt like to me. But it was a very interesting way to start the show. Not bad, but not like great either, except for, the Boombox Brock and then Paul Heyman rocking out of Seth Rollins' theme. That was brilliant. The Usos are hosting a block party outside, and you got some wrestlers and some local talent who are just kind of nondescript. You'll never see them again. They're all under the tent for the block party. Drake Maverick's got his R-Truth flyers with his Maverick 24/7 t-shirt. We'll see a lot more of the block party later in the night. The announcers speak reverently about the American soldiers who have sacrificed their lives in the name of our country. Then they immediately go to a hard sell for Super Showdown in Saudi Arabia. The timing is impeccable. Shane McMahon then comes out with Drew McIntyre, and Shane goes into a speech about how the Samoan dynasty have, over the decades, been disrespecting the McMahon family and WWE at large. I'm pretty sure we get a "this is boring" chant as Shane is talking. So Shane says he's going to have an exhibition match with a member of the Samoan dynasty. So who's it going to be? We come back from commercial break, and it's Lance Anoa'i, who is a cousin of Roman Reigns. He's a member of the Samoan family of wrestlers, and so he's facing Shane McMahon one-on-one. But before the bell can ring, however, Drew McIntyre pulls Lance out of the ring, beats him up. Shane very half-heartedly, very sarcastically is telling Drew to stop beating him up, which is actually pretty entertaining. So Lance gets thrown back in the ring. The match is on. Shane gets his licks in. Lance actually has a moment to shine and get a big hope spot, which gets the crowd really awake for it too. But Shane ends up coming back and puts Lance in the triangle choke, so he taps out there. It is the first official match of the night. Now, the way I described the whole opening segment with Seth and Kofi and Brock, and then the whole Dolph Ziggler thing, and then everything leading up to this. It took about 50 minutes to get to this point in the show where we actually finally have a match. Shane versus Lance Anoa'i. And the match itself goes less than 90 seconds. So we get almost an hour in, we finally get a match, and it's this really kind of short thing of a match. It's Very interesting that this is the counter that Raw has to Double or Nothing, which was all wrestling all the time. This first hour was all about like telling stories. And, you know, you could argue one way or the other if the stories worked or not. But, you know, it's definitely a weird shift, a weird adjustment after seeing all the chaos and all the great stuff that happened in Double or Nothing on Saturday night. So Shane puts the hold back on Lance, and Lance is tapping everything. Shane's just, you know, trash talking him. Roman Reigns finally shows up. He takes out Drew and works over Shane. He signals for the spear, but Drew helps Shane escape, and so the heels run away. I didn't hate this segment. I think it did a really good job putting Shane over as a cowardly chicken shit heel who has it out with the Samoan wrestlers and everything, and, you know, Roman making the save, and that was all good, well and good. I think he did a good job setting these guys up and telling the story leading to Super Showdown. I just think, you know, the timing is unfortunate. The fact that we had to wait this long for any kind of like official in-ring action. Like, if you don't count the Ziggler Xavier Woods fight, the brawl that took place in the early part of the show, then this was the first real match, and, you know, it was so short and took so long to get there. Not a great way to spend the first hour. But it's okay, because at the top of the second hour, Boombox Brock reappears. He and Paul Heyman are back in the ring. Seth Rollins shows up and verbally just tears down Brock for what happened at WrestleMania. Heyman is reading the contract aloud and mentions how the person who holds the briefcase has 1 full year to cash in, which is completely news to Brock. Like, he goes, "What? I have a year?" He slaps Heyman in the face with the contract, which is a pretty funny visual. And so Heyman goes, wait, or Lesnar, I should say, goes, "Wait, I have a whole year to decide who I'm going to challenge. Well, screw you, Seth Rollins." And he walks away. So he's kind of planted the seeds that, you know, now he wants to make Rollins sweat and basically wait until however long it might take for Lesnar to make his decision, which is a pretty good move for Lesnar. I think it's funny though, the fact he didn't know that it's like he has a year to cash in. I know Lesnar was not in the company when they first introduced the Money in the Bank and made that rule official, but you'd think by now someone would have told him about it. As Heyman and Lesnar make their way back up the ramp, everyone in the arena looks up in the opposite direction to see what's going on. It's R-Truth and Carmella being pursued by all the lower card guys going after Truth's 24/7 championship. I think it's pretty disappointing that 1 week into the existence of the championship and putting over the 24/7 aspect of it, that we didn't see any kind of activity about it on social media. I think it's a perfect use of the medium and the championship to try and really get it over and just have fun with it. I know I'm far from the first person who said that, but, you know, Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff, you could easily have some kind of shtick going on with the championship. You saw a few skits, you know, online where people are kind of lying in wait and like plotting to fight R-Truth. Like, we saw Matt Hardy do it, we saw Heavy Machinery do it. I'm sure others as well, but like, that was all I really saw of it. I think if you want, you know, you can have fun with that. You can have a bunch of different championship changes and then finally put it back on R-Truth in time for Monday. But I think that's kind of a waste of opportunity there. At least with the DDT Pro Iron Man Heavy Metalweight Championship, which a lot of people are drawing comparisons to with the 24/7 title, you had a lot of those title changes happening on, you know, YouTube and Twitter and whatnot as things were going on. And it was goofy and it was fun, and you still put the championship over and you get views on your respective, you know, social media accounts, but they didn't take advantage of that. Hopefully, maybe in the weeks to come, they can, but I'm starting to lose hope. Backstage, we see AJ Styles in the trainer's room. He was supposed to be in a fatal 4-way match to determine a new #1 contender for the Universal Championship, but he says he hurt his back in his match with Seth Rollins at Money in the Bank, so he won't be medically cleared to compete. And it just so happens the man who's replacing him, Baron Corbin, beats him up mid-interview in the trainer's room. So we get some more of that conflict between AJ and Baron Corbin. Up next, Becky Lynch and Nikki Cross take on the Iconics in non-title action. Curious the fact that the lower third graphic for the Iconics had them as the Raw Women's Tag Team Champions. So either it's a typo or they've been moved to Raw all of a sudden and it's no longer a floating championship and they didn't make a big deal out of it. Anyway, the Tag Team Champions, as they are wont to do, look like total J-Brones against Becky Lynch and Nikki Cross, who up until last week had never teamed up before. This is par for the course, the Iconics, I guess. Becky Lynch beats Peyton with the manhandle slam, which basically looks kind of like a rock bottom. Maybe they're trying to put that finisher over now, and so poor Iconics. Afterward, Lacey Evans hellos and goodbyes to get under Becky Lynch's skin, so a showdown is clearly imminent, just not at Super Showdown because, well, you know. Also worth pointing out, by this point, they have completely violated one of the basic tenets of the wildcard rule in that 4 people from SmackDown could be on Raw. At this point, at least 6 people have shown up from SmackDown, and they do no service in trying to explain that away. Outside the arena, the block party continues after a brief stare down between Naomi and Tamina, which is quickly resolved. The Revival show up and get in the face of the Usos, and Naomi just wants these 2 teams to squash their beef, and Dash Wilder really brings that point home by grabbing a beef patty and literally squashing it in his hand. So squash the beef. What does that mean? Stay tuned. Up next, Ricochet and Cesaro in a rematch. So nice we get to see it twice. Too bad it took about 90 minutes for us to see a good match on Raw, though. Great sequence where Rico goes for a 630, but Cesaro moves. Rico rolls through. Cesaro with hits with a big-ass European uppercut in the corner, and the finish to this match was wild. Ricochet doing a handstand on the apron from the outside, putting his legs around Cesaro's neck, sits up by core strength alone, and turns into a Frankensteiner and wins the match. You know, I know it's 50-50 booking, and I hate that, but man, this match still ruled. The commentary announces that Rey Mysterio has separated his shoulder after the beatdown by Samoa Joe after their championship match at Money in the Bank, so next week he'll be forced to relinquish his U.S. championship. Quick question, if the finish was an audible in that pay-per-view match because Samoa Joe broke his nose, why was he still out there for about a 4-minute beatdown after the fact? Just curious. Then Samoa Joe comes out and basically reiterates to the live audience what the announcer just told the television audience and saying, you know, Rey's gonna relinquish his championship. He better give it back to me. And my thinking is, it'd be kind of cool if he like petitioned to have that match from Money in the Bank stricken from the record entirely, because, you know, his shoulder was up in the pinfall, so it was an illegitimate pinfall, and the champion, the one who won, is immediately not clear to compete. So maybe Joe could petition or argue that, you know, the match be removed from the record books and Joe never lost a championship. Might be a nice little heat boost for him. They plug Sami Zayn on the electric chair, which doesn't look good with or without context. By the way, I wanted to mention this. You know, last week it was brought to my attention that it seems that Raw is doing this big kind of like aesthetic change in the third hour. Like they have like kind of grittier black and white graphics. They changed the lighting on the stage. You know, I didn't really think much of it when I saw it last week because like, well, Raw does these weird graphic changes with their matchup screens, kind of experimental stuff like all the time. It seems like every couple of weeks they do something different with their matchup screens. So I didn't think anything of it. The lighting I noticed, but I, again, didn't really think much about it. But, you know, fans really pointed this out to me that maybe it's like some attempt to make the third hour a little edgier. If that's the case, or if it's basically some way to try and like hook viewers in for the third hour, you know, I don't hate it. Back at the block party, the Revival and the Usos are playing cornhole. By God, the carnage. We then get some promos backstage leading up to the Fatal 4-Way match up next. The Miz basically reiterates his whole shtick of, I'm a good guy now, so yay me. They really need to do something else with that character. Then we get Braun Strowman, who says, Lashley, I'm gonna kill you. Miz, I congratulate you on the announcement of your future child. And Corbin, I'm gonna kill you, basically. Like, if you're gonna say something that weird, why would you say it in that order? Where it's like, get these hands, congratulations on your baby, get these hands. Why would you do it in that order? So it's 4-way time. The Miz, Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, Braun Strowman. Winner faces Seth Rollins for the Universal Championship at Super Showdown. And they stress it's an elimination match, and that's kind of irrelevant, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But it's actually a really good match, really entertaining. Near the end, Strowman and Lashley fight their way through the crowd and out of the arena. They've essentially eliminated themselves by countout, I guess. They never really mentioned it on commentary. Corbin beats Miz with End of Days to win, so he'll be facing Seth. And like, he's such a good heel because I don't like him winning this. And also at the same time, Miz is a really shitty babyface because he cuts bad promos. Basically, Miz's face turn is turning into something I don't like because he cuts the same promo every week where I used to be a bad guy, but now I'm a good guy, so you should cheer for me. Also, I lose every match I'm in. In the block party finale, things get intense between the Revival and the Usos in their heated game of cornhole when suddenly R-Truth and his merry band of lower card guys come running through. Drake Maverick's flyers go flying, and that's pretty much where it ends. Truth escapes the guys yet again. It's actually, this series really picked up by the end, and it really ended on a fun note, so I really enjoyed the block party segments on the whole. We then go to the Firefly Funhouse, and in it, Bray Wyatt gives a lot more explanation as to what that creepy mask thing was at the end of a couple of weeks ago. He says he calls it the Fiend, and he says, you know, but don't worry, the Fiend is here to protect us. He says that basically the Fiend is Bray's alter ego. He says, when I'm the Fiend, I can be anything I want to be. And then he gets into a conversation with Abby the Witch. He does a silly kind of doctor gag where he calls Abby a bully, and then things get kind of dark when Abby says, why won't you let me rest? And he says, I don't want to be stuck in limbo anymore. And then Bray kind of shrugs it off, does the crab walk under a limbo pole with some sad, uninterested kids. And that's where it ends. And so things got really far out and creepy at the end with Abby. A lot of mystery in those two lines that Abby the Witch said. And I think it's great stuff. I'm all about what this is going toward, whatever it is. It's now time for the electric chair with Sami Zayn. It's basically an interview segment hosted by Corey Graves where the fans get to ask the questions. Nothing's off limits. They can ask whatever they want. And all I could think of was when I heard this was, wait a minute, didn't Sasha and Bayley do something very similar with this? And Alexa Bliss was the host like late last year when they were trying to plant the seeds for the Women's Tag Team Championships. And wasn't that incredibly dumb too? The first person they get a question from is in the middle of the row. So he's going to step across everybody. Why would you take a question from somebody in the middle of a row? And this dude's first question is, when is your retirement date? Boo! That's the best you can come up with. Sami says, he asks, his comeback is his mother and father related? So kind of a sick burn. And then a little girl is on the microphone next, and she asks what Sami thought of the ginger snaps from Mixed Match Challenge, him and Becky Lynch. And so, he doesn't really know. The girl gets sassy with him, and so he talks trash about her and her parents. And then he goes, were you asking about Becky Lynch or Seth Rollins? Which really kind of comes out of left field, but that's explained in a little bit later on. And then this other person asks, how come you haven't been the Universal Champion yet? Have these people not heard of AEW? Like, of all these questions people could ask, and even Sami brings it up. You could ask me anything. You could ask me about AEW, like that. And so that gets a big ooh and kind of an AEW chant. Like, that's not the time. This shitty segment is not the time to be busting out an AEW reference. And people lost their minds when Sami said that, because now there's all these conflicting rumors and theories about, like, was it scripted? Was it not? If it was scripted, it really, all it does is legitimize AEW by acknowledging them. And, and WWE has a very rich history of trying to not legitimize their competition. If it wasn't scripted, then Sami obviously got an earful in the bag for saying it. And the fact that they cut that line out of the YouTube recap is very telling. Some people say that the fact that Sami said it is proof that, that the AEW and WWE are in cahoots with each other, but that sounds like a bunch of bullshit. Then Seth Rollins shows up yet again tonight because, of course, that random line that Sami said about Becky and Seth was going to lead to a confrontation. Otherwise, why would they do it? So we have a match between them, and it's a very good match to close out the show. Sami works the leg for the bulk of the match, but Seth ultimately wins with the stomp. So yeah, very good match. It's too bad we had to sit through a very bad talky segment to get there. I can't stress enough how refreshing it is to see Seth come out for the third time in this evening. I mean, he's only the champion, so it's nice to have all this increased focus on him, as things should be. And so he confronts Brock in the first and second hour. He has a match with Sami Zayn later in the night. And so I think that's how a champion should be treated. He should be very present and show up a lot in his show, which I think is the right call. SmackDown begins with a rematch from Money in the Bank as Kevin Owens takes on Kofi Kingston in non-title action. Before the match begins, Kevin cuts a promo on the New Day, but he stresses that he had nothing to do with the beatdown on Big E last week. So perhaps a whodunit is in our future. Kofi interrupts, calls Kevin a liar, and says that he will pay for his lies and everything he's done to the New Day over the last couple of months. It's a really good match, by the way. Kevin at one point hits like 2 different frog splashes and a swanton on Kofi, but ultimately Kofi wins the match after hitting Trouble in Paradise on Kevin. Really strong way to open the show. Backstage, R-Truth and Carmella are still running. Then we go to a promo for Super Showdown where they describe it as a WrestleMania caliber pay-per-view, which is a much better phrase to describe it than a pay-per-view that will meet or exceed WrestleMania, because not only does this new verbiage roll off the tongue a lot easier, it also does not immediately bury your biggest annual show. The tag team champions Daniel Bryan and Rowan come out to cut a promo. They say the tag team division on SmackDown is non-existent. He might have a point there. And then Daniel cuts probably one of his most planet-conscious promos he's actually had since his heel turn late last year, where he talks about, the eating of animals and the fracking and all that stuff. So very good promo by Daniel Bryan here. Heavy Machinery come out as challengers for the championships. They lay the challenge out to the champions, and Daniel Bryan says, not tonight in this fracking state of Oklahoma, and so they leave. So, it's the first big test for Heavy Machinery on the main roster coming soon. Carmella takes on Mandy Rose up next. It's pretty much an excuse to promote Mandy's appearance on the cover of the new Female Muscle and Fitness magazine. The match ends, pretty short and sweet match. Sonya Deville distracts Carmella on the apron by just pretty much shoving the magazine in her face. Mandy wins after that. And then we go to more chicanery backstage with R-Truth still running. He bumps into Drake Maverick and the chase is on. Actually, I did pop for a moment moment where R-Truth hides in a photo booth, and as he's doing that, Tom Phillips goes, well, I'll do it. And so then he bumps into Drake Maverick on the way out, and the chase resumes. I really wish they did something with this belt besides the constant running. We get an Aleister Black promo backstage where he says he's waiting for somebody to pick a fight with him. Who will it be? Then we go to Shane McMahon Appreciation Night as Shane, Elias, and Drew McIntyre all make their way to the ring. We get a very well-produced highlight package about Shane's career over the last several years, and then Shane name drops Kevin Dunn afterwards, saying there's no reason to boo Kevin Dunn. Shane then says he wants to beat respect into Roman Reigns at Super Showdown. Elias wants to play a song in honor of Shane, but as he's singing, R-Truth and Drake make their way into the ring, and suddenly we have a match where Truth quickly pins Drake to retain the championship. Why did you have to go to the ring for that? Because the whole thing is like chasing after R-Truth and having these impromptu matches in the outside in the arena and stuff. Why couldn't they just wrestle in the hallway where they already were? But after that, R-Truth is beaten up by Shane and the baddies for daring to interrupt the festivities there. Elias pins R-Truth after a Claymore, and now he is the new 24/7 champion. So Elias finally wins his first championship in WWE, the 24/7 title. And so then Shane makes a tag team match for later where Elias and Drew will take on Roman Reigns and what's left of R-Truth in a tag team match playa. And by the way, he's suspending the 24/7 rule until the match is over, so there's that. Backstage, Charlotte and Lacey Evans are sharing some tea, which is kind of full circle from what we saw, last year when, Becky and Charlotte were friends on TV and they were doing like the tea gestures. Like now, Charlotte and Lacey Evans having some actual tea for once. We then go to a match with Lacey Evans versus Bayley in non-title action. Charlotte's on commentary. It's an okay match. Bayley gets in Charlotte's face on the outside, decks her, and then as Charlotte's trying to get in the ring, the referee's distracted. Lacey goes for a roll-up, but Bayley kicks out. Bayley then rolls up Lacey and just really sinks into it. And so then Bayley wins the match. Afterward, Charlotte and Lacey has fight. Charlotte beats down Lacey, and that's pretty much where it ends. So that partnership dissolved pretty quickly. Didn't take much. Kind of surprised they went to that kind of breakup so soon, considering they, it's a partnership of convenience. And suddenly now Charlotte has something to do with Lacey Evans. Makes you wonder where Charlotte's going to go. It's obviously a feud with Bayley, but you think that the alliance with Lacey would have helped her out a little more, since it was Lacey who helped her win the SmackDown Women's Championship in the first place. We get another Triple H Orton highlight package for Super Showdown, followed by a pretty short nothing promo by Andrade toward Finn Balor. Then we go to our main event, Roman and R-Truth versus Elias and Drew McIntyre. The heels beat down R-Truth on the ramp as he's making his entrance, so it's become an even more dire situation for the good guys. Big hope spot by Truth that allows him to get the hot tag on Roman, who's a House of Fire. He spears Elias to win the match. Then afterward, the 24/7 rule is back on. Roman spears Elias once again. He allows Truth to cover Elias, so he regains the 24/7 championship, which is a nice little one-episode arc for Truth here. I do want to see more variety with what they're doing with this championship, though. After 1 week, though, I'm not really impressed with, it was fun at first, and now it's like, okay, this whole chapter has run its course. Let's try and do something a little different. Let's try and incorporate some more of the social media stuff, shall we? But it was still a fun main event, and it gives Truth a nice rub, so there's that. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And this week, I'm going to go with the Red Show. Raw wins this week. Was the first hour rocky? Yes, indeed it was. We didn't have a match until the end of the first hour, and it wasn't even that good. But besides that, I think Raw was still a stronger show than SmackDown. I think there was better matches overall, better overall storytelling, more interesting things happening on Raw than SmackDown to keep you wanting more. In particular, I loved Boombox Brock, even though they're kind of already beating that horse to death. I still am entertained by Brock and his antics with the boombox. Ricochet versus Cesaro was a great match. The Fatal 4-Way was actually surprisingly good. Firefly Funhouse was very intriguing. Seth and Sami was a good main event, and just the increased focus on Seth, the champion, made that a stronger show for me. With SmackDown, the opening match was great, and it kind of went downhill from there. Like, it was kind of a reverse bell curve, where it started strong, it ended strong with the tag team main event, but everything in the middle was just kind of for me. So, did Raw respond well to Double or Nothing? No, not really. If you compare the two, Raw's, counter to AEW was pretty piss poor if you compare those two. But if you're comparing Raw and SmackDown, which I'm doing, then Raw clearly was a stronger show than SmackDown. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and vote for which show you thought was better by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.